know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
It is the centennial, episode 100 of the Chris Johnston Show. 100 times we have gotten up, either rolled out of bed or found ourselves in a hotel room trying to make this podcast work. And we have made it work at least 100 episodes at a time. And I haven't gotten tired of it. Nor would I ever get tired of it. It's not work. It's supposed to be fun. And it has been nothing but fun with you, Siege, and producer Nick, and everyone else at the SDPN. Congratulations, CJ. Your podcast is at 100.
Next stop, 1,000, my man. We don't stop here. You know, it was actually pretty cool. If you saw the little clip pack that Insider Jay Money put together, he's been on fire. He was pretty savage with you with one of them, but the one
he was
where he spun through some of our episodes and some highlights and that you know, when you're doing it sometimes in real time, you kind of forget everything that goes on. But we've had some goofy moments, some fun moments, and some serious ones. And, you know, it's been fun to do 100, but by no means is that a finish line in my mind. I think that we got a long way to go, pal.
100%. I'll say this. I didn't realize, I completely forgot that the Jeff Carter debacle goes as far back as episode 8. That was really surprising to watch in that highlight pack, that we've been have people guessing about that since episode 8 of this podcast.
Yeah. And it lives on. As I told you, sometimes you don't need an immediate resolution to these things. So, you know, for those that have listened along, at some point we'll reward you for your continued patronage. But, you know, so you got to wait in life for some things.
There's a reason why CJ said episode 1000.
Okay. It'll be before then, I think.
Okay. Hopefully. But seriously, thank you to everyone who's been watching and listening to our episodes. And hopefully, yeah, we do get to a higher number than 100. 1,000 would be pretty great. It would be pretty indicative of how good this podcast has been if we can get to that mark. But I'm really happy that we're at this point, and I'm really happy that we have NHL games we can talk about on this podcast. Not that we didn't have before. We know the NHL season started a little late last week, but Toronto and Montreal went down on Wednesday night, and great way to start. And we'll also at some point also get to Vancouver, Edmonton as well. Got a few other things to clean up with the Hockey Canada story. We recorded just before the big announcement that Scott Smith and the board of directors would be stepping aside. We do have an update with regards to Ian Cole as well. And it's Thursday, so we will have stick tests. But I want to start with Montreal-Toronto because that was a great game, great drama. I know a lot of people complained about the beginning, the intro, and how long it took at the Bell Center. But in terms of the action, I thought it was pretty great.
It was amazing in that intro that they even took time to mention you. I mean, they went right through the concession workers, the media that couldn't be there because they've moved to Calgary. I mean, you know, I was young when that thing started, but
I was doing a radio interview at the same time, and like maybe they had me 15 minutes or something like that. It was the intro was still going. Like that's how long it was going.
And I think it's fair to call it out, at least in some playful manner, because the Canadiens rightly have gotten a lot of flowers over the years for being the kings of, you know, they're just striking the right chord with ceremonies, difficult moments. And that one just felt a little bit off to me for whatever reason. I don't know exactly what it was. I wasn't in the building. Maybe if you were there, you felt something that you couldn't get at home, but it did not translate too well to the screen. But look, the game was interesting. Just shows you, you know, you spend all summer thinking, you know, how things are, and then see game one and everything's a little bit upside down. But, you know, the Leafs were quite sloppy. The Canadiens were too in some ways, but I think that's way more to be expected. We've heard Martin St. Louis. One thing I really like about him as a coach is he talks about not trying to overcoach his team. And you know, I think that especially with, you know, 4 rookies on his blue line on opening night and, you know, Juraj Slafkovsky up front as well, you know, he's willing to see some mistakes. You know, he talks about wanting to see the ceiling. He's not worried about the floor as much. They'll fix the floor, I think was the line to use. So, you know, pretty entertaining night. And Cole Caufield, man, buy this stock now because it's going to the moon. I think everyone was sort of expecting it last year. It's such a difficult start to the season. But the change in coach clearly has benefited him. He was basically a point per game player down the stretch, had a hat trick in the last game of the Canadiens regular season, and he has 2 on opening night. And so I think the Canadiens are going to be pretty entertaining this season. I think the Leafs will be too, even if the entertainment on night one maybe wasn't in the manner, fans of the team would like. But, a good way to kick off the season. And I'm just jazzed we get to see games. I'm going to the game tonight at Scotiabank Arena. I know you'll be at the Saddle Dome for the Flames opener. Like, it's pretty cool that this is really back. A little bit like Christmas morning for me, the way it feels today.
It absolutely does. I have my suit ready and everything for the game at the Saddle Dome. Just want to mention one thing about the Canadiens just before we get to the Leafs, and then we'll eventually bring on David Bastl. Cole Caufield, hell of a game, hell of a shot. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say this. As long as I've been watching the Montreal Canadiens, I'm not considering the older eras I wasn't around for. I think as long as I've been watching the Montreal Canadiens, Cole Caufield has the best shot I've seen of any Canadiens player. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic when I say that.
Yeah, I don't even know who we would say rivals it, really. I mean, if there's one thing the organization sort of lacked at times is a pure goal scorer, right? I mean, Max Pacioretty had some nice years there, but, Cole Caufield has 40 plus potential, right? I don't know. You'd probably be better to me in the trivia side of this. I don't remember when a Canadian last scored that much.
Stéphane Vichet would be my guess.
There you go. Kovalev had some great years, offensively for the Canadiens. Even that, we're going back a while. They've had some really strong teams, but usually if you look at the Carey Price years, Carey Price's best years in net, what felled them in the playoffs is just not getting enough offense. And so Cole Caufield's a game breaker type player for them. And, we'll see what becomes of Juraj Slafkovsky too. But yeah, you're right. You're watching something different, and he just got that goal scorer's everything about him, like his sort of swagger, I might call it, confidence, wants the puck on his stick, wants to shoot it. And a lot of good things happen when he's getting 4 or 5 shots a game.
So the Leafs, we were kind of joking before we started recording. Rome is burning. Like, everything is just, they lost the first game of the year. They didn't look great. People are already starting to freak out. And I mean, I think it's just game one, but I guess I could understand that a lot of Leafs fans are feeling a bit jaded at just saying, oh, well, it's just game one. It's just another one of those games that they found a way to not win. Even Sheldon Keefe considered the effort from his team unacceptable. I have an issue with that. Here's my issue with it. We know how Leaf fans get. We know how the media gets. We know how the pressure gets in that market. I think Sheldon Keefe is absolutely right to say that the effort is unacceptable. There's a part of me that thinks he should probably just do it in the locker room and maybe say something else to the media and just be like, you know what? Let's just file this one and forget it and just push on to the home opener. I don't know. There's a part of me that just felt that what Sheldon Keefe said just kind of adds a little bit more fuel to the anxiety being brought up by Leafs fans. But maybe that's just maybe panicked way of looking at it. Fine, sure. But I also think, considering the pressure that's already been applied to the Leafs right now, geez, like you're adding more to that.
Well, let's take the other view of the coin. I mean, for them to ever do what they want to do, win playoff series, get to a Stanley Cup, win a Stanley Cup, they're going to face pressure beyond what they're feeling on day 2 or 3 of the NHL season. I think maybe he wants them to have to come through some shit, for lack of a better word. And, it's also just the truth. It really was not the Leafs. We all know what's riding on this season. We've talked it up, like to come out and just be sloppy and they didn't really have much going on in the game, quite frankly. Their top line was notably quiet. Nylander Tavares had a good game, I thought, but they didn't dominate a team that's clearly inferior to them in terms of talent. So, and NHL readiness. I mean, and so I don't mind it. The other thing too, Julian, the Leafs have a really tough October. Like, if you look at the schedule, they play a lot of games. I mean, they're 4 games and 6 nights right out of the gate. They got some difficult teams. They have a California road trip before the end of the month. This is going to be a little bit of a gauntlet to start. Obviously, the goaltending questions are going to remain with Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov. I would presume both taking a lot of starts because there is so many games early on. So Sheldon Keefe doesn't want to waste any time here. And I think on one hand, those of us a little more removed from it, and like I look at it, I go like, look, this team won, I think 2 of 7 games out of the gate last year, and then had 115 points. So even if they lose to the Capitals and they're 0-2, even if they lose to the Senators on Saturday and they're 0-3, look, I'm not going to say that's a good start. I'm not defending them, but it probably isn't the end of the world. But I think it's how you lose. And there just was way too, I mean, at minimum, they should have got a point, right? It's 20 seconds left. And Jake Muzzin, probably one of their most reliable defensive defensemen, just can't clear the puck in a way that you would expect him to. So, at minimum, you should get that game to overtime and at least have a point. And so I think Sheldon Keefe, I don't think he minds the pressure. He's also an emotional guy. I should say this too. I mean, you have to remember that interview maybe happens 10 minutes after the game. And it's been my experience being around Sheldon Keefe, even when sometimes it's an emotional win, he just tends to be really honest in those post-game press conferences. I think it's the emotions of being on the bench in the NHL, doing everything you got to do. And then all of a sudden the cameras are there. He's not afraid to be honest and blunt at times. And maybe you don't expect it on game 1 of the season, but this is a season where I don't think the Leafs can take anything for granted, and be very interested to see how they respond. Maybe not just with the game against the Capitals, but in this next week. I mean, because if it is 0-3, I mean, it'll get crazy around here. I mean, it was crazy last year when they were 2-5 to start the year. It got nuts. So that's kind of the environment they're operating in.
Any final Leafs observations before we bring in DB?
I'll restrict my judgment, I suppose. I don't think I want to look too far into it, but as I said, really sloppy game. Just, we'll see what the big guys can do. I mean, Matthews and Marner both have had great careers, but coming off great regular seasons. I look to see a little bit more of them here as we go through the next stretch of games.
All right. Time to bring on David Bastl from Sports Interaction. As always, for people 19 and over and in Ontario, we ask that you play responsibly, and there will be a link to responsible gaming strategies in the description of this show. Cue the intro music. Welcome to You Can Bet That with David Bastl. Remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. Let's take a look at some lines for tonight's games, including one I will be in the building for, the Colorado Avalanche, who played Wednesday night against the Calgary Flames. The Flames are actually the favorite at -120, the Avs at +100. Probably it's because of the fact that they're playing the second night of a back-to-back. That's my guess.
Yeah, you know what? Good guess. And it's a competitive team, right? It's not, the Avalanche aren't going back-to-back with Chicago like they did last night. So you're looking at that. You're also looking at a scenario, CJ, where the Avs likely will start a backup goaltender against the Flames' full, fresh lineup. And you know what? Calgary is a top 5 team based on betting numbers alone. Maybe even talent alone too, for some people anyway. So it's not really a surprise that they're the favorites against the defending Cup champs.
Plus they're at home and it's the home opener, and there's just something a little different about that first night of the season. We saw it around the league last night. Edmonton wins a game at home. Montreal wins its home opener. Anaheim won at home. There's kind of a trend you see with, I think, the guys getting up for those games.
So the next game we'll talk about here, Caps versus Leafs. On the subject of back-to-backs, the Leafs are playing the second game of a back-to-back, but they, I believe, are at home, and they're favored at -187. The Caps at +156. So interesting that the Leafs are favored in the second game of a back-to-back.
Yeah, and you know what? Both teams, right? The Capitals fell to the Bruins last night too, and we're also seeing a scenario here where both backup goaltenders are likely to start here as well. It's kind of funny. We're in day number 2 technically here in North America, and we're looking at back-to-backs for a lot of these teams, right? So, you know what? The Leafs fall to Montreal. It's a short travel trip. Caps fall to the Bruins, somewhat smaller travel trip as well. So not a surprise that the Leafs are favored here, CJ, just because I think last year on home ice, they were favorite 98% of the time, just because of how well this power play is, how talented this team is in the regular season. So not a surprise here to me. What about you?
Well, and you got the Ilya Samsonov revenge game with him starting against his former team. Pretty unique way to start it. Have that happen in your first game with the new team, be it against your last team. I mean, that'll be an interesting dynamic as well.
sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all the best odds before game, in game, and the best props. sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. David Bastl, we'll talk to you on Monday. Peace.
Take care, guys. Bye for now.
Before we break down Vancouver and Edmonton, there are a few other news and notes we need to get to, including the latest out of Hockey Canada. When we recorded on Monday, the latest info we had was that Andrea Skinner resigned. And not long after we finished recording, the news dropped that Scott Smith had resigned from his top position at Hockey Canada, and the board of directors would step aside. Siege, any insight on those resignations, and also who could step in to replace whoever is left?
Well, I mean, if you go back to our episode, the one thing I do recall saying, I don't remember exactly how I phrased it, but was that I thought it was really just a matter of time before all the pieces started to topple. As it turns out, it was about an hour after we recorded that the press release came down from Hockey Canada. You know, it's been now a couple of days since that happened, and we still don't really have very much clarity in terms of, you know, this management committee that's supposed to oversee the day-to-day operations. You know, what Hockey Canada has said is that they're essentially going to elect a new board and have that new board be in charge of hiring the next CEO to replace Scott Smith. That board too will make decisions on some of the other senior executives that remain with the organization that have been there a long time. And so, you know, that's a all well and good sketched out in a press release, but who's running the operation right now is not all that clear. And how the people that run this sort of interim management committee are selected, also not exactly clear. And so I still think we have a lot of unanswered questions. You know, it seems to me too, you know, a number of the MPs have been quite public about wanting to know, you know, what kind of severance Scott Smith might have received for being let go. You know, make it sound like that'll be part of the next round of questioning that's levied at Hockey Canada when they resume the parliamentary sessions. And so we don't have any clarity. I mean, I can't tell you in names. You know, when it comes to the board, you know, basically anyone, is my understanding, could apply. You know, there's sort of an election process. I think the election is due to happen December 17th. It may end up happening a little before that. But, you know, in sort of what's left in the rubble of you know, everything toppling over is a lot of smoke or, you know, a lot of dust has kicked up, but we don't have a lot of clarity in what's going to be built in its place. And so this clearly will be a story we continue to discuss, but yeah, I think it's an overdue step, quite honestly. I mean, it's not like we can sit here and applaud it at this point. I think a tremendous amount of damage has been done to the brand and to the organization for how this was handled, how long it dragged on for. And so there's a big job ahead of whoever it is, whichever group of people end up comprising that board, who's hired as a CEO, and how they move forward from this, because I think there's still a lot of bridge building that needs to be done in faith before faith can be restored.
100%. I mean, they broke trust for a lot of people who care deeply about hockey in this country. It's going to take a lot for them to rebuild that faith back with a lot of people. I think I understand there are a lot of people who might be indifferent, but there's definitely a handful of people, especially at the grassroots level and hockey fans, who definitely would like to see change with Hockey Canada. I am also intrigued as to which potential names could step up. If anyone who has spoken out against Hockey Canada in the last little while might take it upon themselves to step in, or anyone who has worked very much on different parts of the game with building it up, like a Daniel Sauvageau, for example, would want to step up and take a board of directors position. But I guess that's something we're going to determine in the next little while.
Well, I think that there's some hope it can be someone maybe a little beyond the hockey world, maybe not someone as ingrained in it. You know, that's a tricky proposition. It's similar to what the NHL Players Association is facing in replacing Donald Fehr. Is on one hand, you want someone to bring a completely fresh outlook that isn't part of the machinery. But on the other side of it, if you bring someone in who hasn't worked in the industry as much, there's a huge learning curve there, right? You got to spend a year just figuring out how it all works, building relationships with agents, with players, with everything. In the case of the NHLPA, I think the same would go on at Hockey Canada. You know, it's one thing to want someone with maybe strong governance and business experience, but if you don't understand the nuances of how the game is structured and works within the country, I mean, that's sort of the trade-off, I guess, that you're looking at. But I would suspect or be very surprised if it's a terribly familiar name. You know, but that could change. Look, the decision isn't made. I mean, it's just my early sense is that they do want maybe someone who's not been so much a part of what's happened to lead this forward. But that's going to be a decision for a board of directors, which hasn't yet been appointed. And so let's not put the cart too far before the horse.
Exactly. We will deal with that story as it continues to materialize, as we've done so far on the CJ show. Another note we need to get to, the matter of Ian Cole, the Tampa Bay Lightning defenseman, currently suspended over some pretty disturbing allegations that surfaced over the weekend. Siege, what insight can you tell us on that story?
Well, Ian Cole had a meeting at the NHL head office on Wednesday afternoon, an interview about these allegations. And let's call it as is, or be very clear here. Extremely serious allegations. I'm certainly not here casting any doubt on them, but they were brought forward by someone who's recently created a Twitter account. I believe the name was Emily Smith, attached to that Twitter account. Very detailed set of allegations too, to do with sexual abuse and grooming of someone who's purported to be a minor. But as of this recording, I'm not sure that those allegations have been corroborated or the person behind them has stepped forward. And that does create a bit of a challenging situation when it comes to, what to do with Ian Cole, because, he's hired a lawyer and he has refuted these allegations. And so if there isn't a way to investigate them further, if there's not a person behind them willing to talk to the league, and again, that might still happen even between the time this is recorded and it comes out. But if that doesn't happen, I do think that there's going to be a push to get Ian Cole, unsuspended, so to speak, and back playing while this plays out. So, I don't think that there's not much debate here. If this is just proven to be true in some way, he's definitely facing a lengthy suspension, probably some legal trouble as well. But, right now, as we're in the early days of this, doesn't seem that there's enough there to dive into. And so that's kind of where it stands. It wouldn't entirely surprise me if you saw him reinstated and able to play games for the Tampa Bay Lightning if, someone doesn't come forward or if there isn't a way to corroborate what's been alleged here. And so, I think it's a bit of an awkward one in some ways because, you want to obviously take these things very seriously. I'm certainly not suggesting the league isn't, but if all you have to go on is the tweet, I think that there's more needed before any sort of, real meaningful punishment might be levied.
Okay, one final NHL news and note before we spend a little bit more time looking at Vancouver and Edmonton and Colorado raising their Stanley Cup banner. Just a basic NHL signing, which, maybe we won't even put it on a show like this. But the Buffalo Sabres signing defenseman Mattias Samuelsson, a veteran of 54 NHL games, to a 7-year deal worth $30 million. He has not scored in the National Hockey League. But this contract has gotten a lot of attention, even more so than the fact that head coach Don Granato also got a contract extension. So, Siege, what do you think of Mattias Samuelsson getting this lengthy contract?
It's a bold play in some ways by Buffalo, I would say, but obviously they have the player there, right? And they feel they know him. I think that everything we need to know about what they think about him is the fact that they're willing to make that kind of commitment to him so soon, right? Like we just came through discussing a summer where, Sean Dursey, Nick Hague, Rasmus Sandin, Mikey Anderson, they took a long time to get contracts done. They all signed shorter term deals. Those players have all played more NHL games than Mattias Samuelsson, right? Who immediately steps into a, basically $4.25 million plus contract for 7 years, life-changing kind of money to get that kind of security. I think what the Sabres have done, and with both the Tage Thompson signing and obviously with Samuelsson, is they're front running the anticipated bump in the cap. And they want to get these deals signed before we even know more about that, specifics on exactly where it's going. And they're mindful of the fact that Rasmus Dahlin is going to need a new deal. Won't be so long before Owen Power. I know he's just stepping into the league, but won't be so long before he's potentially looking to make major money. And so, they're trying to lock in some pieces that they identify as being long-term, but at a number that they can work everything else around. So, it's not the way, certainly teams have done this in some individual cases before, But I think that there's clearly a strategy here from Buffalo. I don't think it's a bad strategy, honestly, because they're one of the teams that actually has cap space this season. I mean, when we talk about any other transactional stuff around the league, and when we talk about the Oilers, they had 17 skaters on opening night because they're so tight to the cap and they were dealing with a couple injury illness situations. So, they're one of the teams that have the ability to do this right now, and they might pay off for it longer term. I mean, it really depends on what the player becomes. I think it's sort of an interesting Faustian bargain if you're a player and gets offered this, because on one hand, the only way you really win is if you have if you don't deliver expectations, right? If you don't end up having as good a career as everyone expects, that's the only way you win this deal. I'm really reminded of the John Klingberg contract that Dallas signed in 2015. He played, I think, about 65 games, give or take. So similar kind of, sample size, and signs a 7-year deal, $29.5 million. And he ultimately delivered way more value on that because he became a huge contributor to their team, was their top defenseman for a period of those 7 years. He gets to the end of that contract and he had trouble getting a deal, right? He's landed in Anaheim on a 1-year deal, so a 1-year contract. So, there's a bit of risk reward there, but, I guess ultimately the player opted for security. The team is trying to get the puzzle pieces arranged before the big guys need their next contracts. And so that's why it's generated so much discussion. I mean, there's I tried to look into this. There can't be another skater that has signed a $30 million contract without scoring a goal. I know obviously lots of goalies have done it, but no skater has ever done that. I mean, has to be a first. What a thing for him. But look, he's really got some intriguing defensive underlying numbers. He's going to play with Dahlin. He's never going to, I don't think, be an offensive defenseman, but the Sabres clearly think he's part of the core of their team moving forward.
At the same time, he has scored as many goals in the National Hockey League as you and I, and he is $30 million richer today.
That's, look, sometimes right place, right time, right? How many defensemen, I mean, especially if you're those guys, if you're Sandin or Nick Hague, who just signed in the last week or so here, you had to battle and scratch and claw to get a $1 million contract. And this guy's getting a $3 million contract in Hague's case, but this guy's getting the big money right away. I mean, he just is in the right organization at the right time and has obviously made a strong impression in not so many games to warrant that kind of security.
By the way, I'm not hating. Get paid. We all about getting paid here on the CJ Show. It's just,
we are. Even remember the mascots. I'm all for it. I'm not saying anyone shouldn't make X. That's never the way I look at it. I'm always happy when someone makes some bank.
Get paid. All right, let's talk about Vancouver and Edmonton. I stayed up for that game after Montreal-Toronto, and I'll tell you what, hell of a game. It wasn't looking too good for Soup at the beginning. Jack Campbell allowing the first 3 goals of the game, but then Edmonton showed why they are to be feared with the offense that they have. Connor McDavid gets a hat trick. Leon Draisaitl gets a goal as well. I'm trying to remember the other goal scorer. I'm probably missing it, but Edmonton scoring 5 unanswered goals after being down 3-0 to win it over the Vancouver Canucks in their season opening game at home. What a game that was.
Yeah, because it started so ominously, right? I mean, we've talked a bit about Campbell, but so much pressure on him. He signs this big contract and he's down 2-0 in the first few minutes, and then ultimately 3-0 early in the second period. Maybe the knives were going to come out there, and then instead you get another glorious Connor McDavid moment. And how about in the first game of this guy's 8th season, and they're not even been full seasons because you had a COVID interrupted year. He had an injury in his first year. He gets to 700 points. I mean, basically averaging 100 plus points a season right from the start of your career is bananas. It's a cheat code. What a way to get it done on the home opener. I'm feeling good about the Oilers. I know that they're not a perfect team. There probably is not a perfect team anywhere, if we're being honest. I think that we could probably point to some weaknesses on even the best teams in the league, but just having that ability to score at will, no team, they're never really out of a game. I wouldn't think. And so that kind of underscores it. Again, hockey, that probably the coaching staffs on both sides are like, lots of mistakes in there, but you certainly got your money's worth if you're an Oilers fan who went down to the opener. I just think we're still seeing the best player of our generation in Connor McDavid. So let's gear in for more of this. I think this is going to be his 50 goal year. I mean, I told you I don't like predictions, but I just hearing, some of his focus on scoring more, and it's nice to get 3 in the bank, right, with an empty netter right on opening night. But I think this is the year he hits 50 for the first time.
Man, 700 points in 488 NHL career games. Just insane. And yeah, 50 goals seems very likely for a player of Connor McDavid's ilk. I'm just looking at this team and seeing how they play. They had that power play goal where they were just working down low, and the tic-tac stuff and the speed at which they work at. Like, if you're coaching against that, like, what are you doing to slow down the play? Connor McDavid already is one of those guys where you can only hope to contain him. There's only so few of them in each major sport where it's just like, well, we know this person's going to produce. You have to contain them and let someone else beat you. Like, the game plan to go up against the Edmonton Oilers, I mean, a team like Colorado can match up with them because they can do the same thing. But man, I would hate to be a Daryl Sutter or Dave Hackstar or anyone else in that Pacific Division or anyone else around the league whose job it is to stop Connor McDavid when he comes into your building.
Well, you don't want to take penalties. I mean, the Oilers have been consistently a top power play the last number of years. They look to be right. Like, there's no early season jitters or kinks to be worked out with that power play, the way they moved it around on the first McDavid goal. Yeah, that would definitely be part of most coaches' messages, though, is just try to stay out of the box. And actually, Vancouver did pretty well. I think they maybe had 4 power plays in the game, but they had 8 themselves at their end. But they also gave up a shorthanded goal. So, special teams often end up making the difference. But yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's much you can game plan when you have Draisaitl and McDavid and then all kinds of guys, whether it's Evander Kane. I mean, they've just got so many weapons, and they've clearly systematically figured out a way to play, because they year after year after year after year, and every team game plans for the power play, the Oilers still score at a better rate than pretty much everyone in the league.
It's an insane offense. They look really good. I'll say it here. I think the Oilers might be the best team in the division, at least for the regular season. I don't know what it's going to mean for the playoffs for them this year, but in terms of the offense, in terms of the weapons that they have at their disposal, Jack Campbell, I know he had a little rough start, but he at least rebounded and helped this team win. But they're better at goalie than they were last year. The Oilers look like the best team in that division, and there's a big reason why a lot of people are slotting them as a Cup finalist. They look really good. Are
you going to be able to walk in the Flames dressing room after making that statement, or what?
I think so. I mean, look, here's my thing. I don't know what it means for the playoffs, because I think for a team like the Calgary Flames, built as they are, like, they're still a very good team. And I think they'll be able to give Edmonton a run for their money. But I also think with the way the Oilers are playing against everyone else, that might help them at least look good in the regular season. In the playoffs, very different story. Very different story. And for a team like the Flames anyway, like, I don't know if anyone here is a Flames fan and is wondering, like, oh, why aren't you praising the Flames more? Like, you kind of want them to do better in the playoffs. And the jury, I think, is still out on how those two teams will match up in the postseason. But I think in the regular season anyway, the Edmonton Oilers look really, really good. One thing about the Flames, too, they still need to gel with some of those new guys in there. The Oilers don't have that. I could be wrong, obviously. But no, I think I get why the Oilers are being looked at as a top team in the NHL right now and a top team in the division. They look a little better than Calgary right now. And I know it's one game and Calgary hasn't played, but I'm willing to say that easily. And if you have Connor and Leon, of course, you're going to look better.
All right. I'm just wondering. I didn't know if you're going to be feeling the heat in the Flames country after praising the Oilers so much.
I mean, you know what's funny, actually? I think there are actual Flames fans, and maybe I'm wrong on this, who would actually rather I do this as opposed to being like, nah, the Flames are the best team in the NHL. I won't mention this colleague's name, but they mentioned the idea that the Flames might be really good, and they actually got hated on as a result of it. The fan base here in Calgary is so different from what I'm used to in like Montreal or seeing in Toronto. Like in those markets, if there's any glimmer of hope, it's like, nah, man, we're running with it. There's a very good chance they could win. In Calgary, it's like they've been hurt too many times. They've seen the heightened expectations before, and they've been let down, and they don't want to get hurt again. Like that's what it's like in Calgary.
Every fan base in this country has been hurt. Everybody has been stomped.
I know.
It's been 30 freaking years since someone won a Stanley Cup in Canada. Like, it's actually insane. It is
It's insane. But
We
it's
could go
different
like
Calgary.
across the country and just be like, where are your scars? Like show us where it hurts. And like every fan base is gonna have
I
some,
agree.
like, really bad scars.
I agree, but you know, and I know in the markets that we were born and raised in, that as many fans that there are that could show their scars and be like, I don't want to get hurt again, there are just as many, if not more, who are like, nah, man, we're running it back. Let's do it. I don't care. We're going to do this. That doesn't happen nearly as much in Calgary, and it is very much a big adjustment. I did a poll for The Athletic where I got a whole bunch of fans to chime in about the expectations for this team. And one of the questions I think was, do you think with the core that's in place that the Flames could win a Stanley Cup, I think within the next 3 years? Like 52% of people said no. Like what? It's not something I expected. It's not something I expected. So to your earlier point, I'll just say this. To your earlier point, yes, there might be fans who might be like, oh, I don't know how this guy thinks the Oilers might be better. There might be some fans just as much who are just like, yes, Julian, underrate the Calgary Flames. Don't heighten the expectations up, which is really weird, but like, that's how it works.
Yeah, I just think we've got a country full of people conditioned to expect nothing good to happen. I mean, how many, because like you mentioned, like the Leafs, like how many Leafs fans watch the game one and go like, of course. Or, like,
Yes.
You know, like immediately, I mean, just like are like, this is shit. This is awful. You know, I think that, and I get it. I get it. Cause you've seen that you always thought, oh, the team never had any superstars. Then they got superstars. And you're like, well, they're never great in the regular season. Then they had like a bunch of great regular seasons. And then I get how it ends that way. But, you know, someone is going to break the curse in Canada. I don't even know if it's a curse, but, you know, I picked the Oilers, as you know, in our prediction show to win the cup. Like, I think one Canadian team winning the cup might help other Canadian teams oddly win the cup. I think that there's just some hex or something that needs to go down. But, you know, the Cubs and the Red Sox won a World Series in our lifetime after going lifetimes. You know, the New York Rangers won a Stanley Cup in 94 after going since, I think, 1948. You know, eventually all things come to an end. And Canada's Cup is coming.
It is coming. I think it was 2 months old when the Rangers won in 1994. I believe it was then. And then June 12th when they had their parade. Wasn't that like a crazy day? Like sports, like the OJ chase happened as well.
Chase. Yep.
Yeah, a whole bunch of other different things. Anyway, speaking of Cup champions, the Colorado Avalanche celebrated their championship in front of their fans on Wednesday against Chicago. Jack Johnson, who plays for Chicago now, was able to join the team in line. I think that's one of the better moments we've seen to the start of this NHL season. Mark Hoppus of Blink-182. We all know how all the small things dominated the Avs. Well, that's a big thing for if you're going to Ball Arena, you're watching an Avalanche game, and now Sportsnet has put it on every second commercial. So we are going to be, we're gonna. I don't know if we're gonna get fed up with that song, but we are gonna listen to that song a lot during this.
Is it a
NHL
hot
season.
take for me to say I'm already kind of fed up with it?
I feel like a lot of people are. I'm not fed up with it yet, but I know a lot of people. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way.
Actually, fed up isn't the right word. I'm just like, I'm a little tired of it. It's like, okay, we get it. They play a song and everyone sings. I mean, it's nice. It's cool when you're in the rink, but I feel like it got overplayed a little bit. Maybe just on social media. I don't know. As I say, when I've been at Ball Arena, like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's cool when you're in the building. I just feel like the coverage of it has gone a little too far. I mean, other teams have had other songs that fans sing. I mean, this is sports.
My thing about it is that I don't want it to get to a point where we've played it so much that everyone gets fed up of it. Like everywhere you go, like you'll hear the song because it's a very good song and it's a very good. And I know some people are gonna be like, oh well, this team did it too and this team did it too. But I'm sorry, we were associating with the Colorado Avalanche, and it's a cool tradition for them. I don't want people to get fed up with it. I don't want it to be oversaturated, if that makes sense.
I think we're already there for me, but maybe I'm just being a curmudgeon.
I guess. But shout out to the Avalanche for them celebrating a Cup championship. And they're playing the second night of a back-to-back in Calgary later tonight on a Thursday. But the Avalanche also getting the job done against Chicago as well. They still look really good.
Yeah, let's be honest. Like, that's the team to beat, and not just because they won the last cup. It's, they won the last cup with Bo and Byram hurt. Now they have Alex Newhook elevated to the second line center position. Maybe that isn't going to be a seamless transition, but they're injecting good young players back into the lineup that won and still have the most dangerous threats playing for their team. And so, I think that I feel really good about their ability. Like I don't see another team in the West that I think really challenges them top to bottom lineup wise. As much as I'm talking up the Oilers, I think that I'm still taking Colorado if you put the lineup side by side in terms of which one looks better to me. And yeah, it was a great moment too with Jack Johnson. I don't actually want to rush past that because it was pretty cool seeing him, in the Chicago sweater out there with his old teammates and arm in arm watching the banner go up. I mean, that's a memory for a lifetime, winning that championship. And then, this is the last chance really to celebrate it. I know they'll do a 10-year reunion or whatever down the road, but this is the last chance to celebrate it. And then you get to the real games. And I thought that was a real kind of special, cool moment for that, good on everyone for making that happen.
Yeah, cool. Any other NHL observations before we get to stick taps? A bit of a short one today.
Yeah, a little short one. I got to get down to Scotiabank Arena. But look at it. It's so exciting the start of the year. I mean, watching the highlights of Anaheim's, win over Seattle, Matty Beniers. I know we've been talking him up, but we're Matty Beniers fans on this podcast. He scores in that game. I just think it's been a cool start to the season, and I'm excited to get rolling right through the weekend. Where basically by then you will have seen every team play at least once, and then we're right back into it. But up to our eyeballs in hockey every day.
Let's do it. Now, our next partner is a pretty cool product. Let's talk about Athletic Greens. If you're looking to get better gut health, more energy, or a stronger immune system in a really easy, natural way, you've got to check out Athletic Greens. I'm sure you'll agree that most of us are not huge fans of having to take a bunch of pills or vitamins in the morning, but with Athletic Greens, you can get rid of all of those extra vitamin bottles and finally make some room in your cabinet. Athletic Greens is an all-in-one solution that actually tastes good. You'll actually enjoy getting your daily vitamins in. So what is this stuff? With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and even aging. All of the things. It's also lifestyle friendly, whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or you are gluten-free. It also contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals, or artificial anything, while still tasting good. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season, just around the corner. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. No need for a million different pills and other supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do, go visit athleticgreens.com/Johnston. It's CJ's last name, athleticgreens.com/Johnston, to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. Stick tap time. It's an opportunity to show some love to somebody in the NHL world, or adjacent, or whoever we really want to, if we're really being honest. Should I start or should you start?
You can go.
I was just going to give a stick tap to Blink 182 because they used this opportunity, the NHL season being back in Colorado, using all the small things to announce that they're coming back with Tom DeLonge on a giant world tour. I'm very excited about that. Hopefully I could get some tickets and watch them at the Saddle Dome. I saw someone say that the arena is not great for acoustics, but I still want to see what it's like and experience a concert there. So maybe Blink 182 and all of the other bands coming with them will be my first experience. But stick taps to one of the most legendary punk pop bands of all time coming back. They're coming. So they told us in that fun ad of theirs that they did. But yeah, stick tap to them.
That's a cheeky stick tap after I said I'm all played out on all the small things.
They have other songs, CJ.
I know. And I'm not a hater by any means in the big picture. I just heard a lot of that in the last few months. My stick tap is going to be to Arbor Jackeye.
Hey,
offered quite a story in reaching the NHL, played his first official NHL game on Wednesday night for the Montreal Canadiens. You know, some I'm sure are familiar, but if you're not, he was working at Costco at a point early in the pandemic. You know, played in the Ontario Hockey League, was never drafted, and pretty remarkable story for him to go from, you know, his time in Kitchener and later Hamilton of the OHL to directly to the Montreal Canadiens lineup. And I know he's become a bit of a fan favorite around the Canadiens, but I think that his story is one that more broadly, you know, any player out there that feels like they've been overlooked or you know, are wondering where their future's headed, that, you know, what a shining light this is, that he could go from, you know, only a couple of years ago having to work a part-time job to get by and maybe not having a hockey career to playing in the NHL. That's an awesome achievement. And, you know, I hope he has a great season.
love that stick tap because of the fact that he went from Costco to the NHL. Started from the bottom. Now you're here, buddy.
I went from Wendy's to this podcast.
Yep. I was about to say, like, you could come up from Costco, you could come up from Wendy's, you could come up from anything. You could believe in anything if Magic made it, if you really think about it. So, yeah, follow your dreams, kids.
I was once
Follow
a
your
Coburg
dreams.
Daily Star newspaper boy, and here I am.
I was once a Montreal community contact intern. And look where I am. I don't even live in Montreal anymore.
I was once mixing plastic at GE Plastics as a summer student, working 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. shifts, like trying to stay awake on the deck upstairs. And here I am.
On a future episode, let's go through every single job that you've done that has led you to this point in your career.
I'm game. Do I know a crazy stat?
Yes, please.
I've never not worked since I was 8 years old.
8 years old? They
I
had you
haven't-
work from 8?
I have an unending streak of like odd jobs. I mean, some of those jobs when I was really young, like I became a hockey referee, I was a baseball umpire. You know, some of them were like, I don't want to make it sound like it was all hard labor. A lot of them were kind of fun. But yeah, I've been going straight for 30 years plus.
Man, okay. You need a break, sir. You need a break.
If you're doing what you love, it's not work, right? And that's how we both feel. And that's how I felt for a long time. So, but yeah, I've been at it for a long time and kind of done a little bit of everything.
All right. Well, thanks, Siege. Thank you to everyone for listening to episode 100 of the Chris Johnston Show. Get your questions in now for Ask CJ. We'll get to them on Monday. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'll see you all on Monday. For Siege, I'm Julian. Peace.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada's sportsbook.
Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JKMcKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.